Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you, like me, are fascinated by digging into the real stories behind historical events and understanding why our memory of things can be so different from reality, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. At the end of this deep dive, I want to hear your verdict. Drop a comment letting me know if you agree with my take or not. Your opinion truly matters. Alright, let's get into it. Today, we're not just talking about a weapon. We're talking about an idea, an engineering vision, the immense hopes of a small nation, and how the brutal reality of war shatters even the most beautiful illusions. Our main subject is the Polish anti-tank rifle Model 35, also known as the wz.35, and also the subject of one of World War II's most persistent myths. There's this convenient concept in history, the wonder weapon. It explains everything. We would have one if we had just mass-produced our supergun in time. The Germans said it about the V2 and the King Tiger. And the Poles? They had their own wonder, this very anti-tank rifle. The story goes, it was secret, super powerful, could stop tanks, but it was hidden away, never given to the soldiers, and that's why we lost in September 39. Sounds compelling, right? A tragedy with a hint of conspiracy. But history, as I found digging through the materials, is a much more complex and mundane thing. And today we're going to dissect this story piece by piece, from the engineering blueprint to the battlefield. And along the way, we'll understand why some myths live for so long. Part 1. The context: a world afraid of tanks. To understand why this rifle was even needed, let's mentally transport ourselves to Europe in the mid-30s. The Treaty of Versailles, which was supposed to ensure peace, in reality created a fragile and very nervous system. Germany, humiliated and disarmed, was openly tearing up these restrictions. Hitler had come to power. The air smelled of a new war, and everyone felt it. And what was the main threat on the battlefield after World War I? Tanks. Those very iron monsters that broke the stalemate of trench warfare. And infantry didn't have many means to fight them. Anti-tank guns were expensive, complex to manufacture, and not very mobile. Something simpler was needed, something that could be put into a soldier's hands. Thus, the idea of the anti-tank rifle ATR was born, essentially a gigantic rifle firing a special bullet that could pierce the thin armor of tanks from that era. And Poland, young, proud, having regained its independence just a couple of decades prior, keenly felt its vulnerability. It had two powerful and unfriendly empires at its borders, Germany to the west and the USSR to the east. The army needed modernization, needed to find asymmetric responses to potential threats. And it was in this atmosphere of anxiety and hope that a talented engineer appeared, Józef Marózek. He was tasked with creating that very spear for the infantry to use against the Iron Dragons. Part 2. The development: genius or simply good work. And here we come to the first myth. It's often written that Marózek created something revolutionary, a weapon ahead of its time. Let's look at this objectively. The design of the wz.35 was essentially a giant Mauser rifle. A long barrel, a turnbolt action that you had to rotate and pull back. No magic. No gas pistons like in future assault rifles, no semi-automatic mechanisms. Simple, reliable, proven. So where's the wonder then? The wonder is in the cartridge. This is where things get really interesting. The 7.92 by 107mm cartridge was a monster. A huge case packed with propellant and a heavy bullet. Marózek's engineering mind and his team concentrated right here on ballistics. The task: to accelerate a bullet to a speed that would allow it to penetrate armor. And they achieved a phenomenal velocity, about 1,275 meters per second. For comparison, a standard rifle bullet travels at about 800 to 900 meters per second. The energy of the shot was colossal. But that's not all. Here we encounter a mystery that historians and ballistic experts are still puzzling over. What was that bullet made of? There are two main versions, and each gives birth to its own myths. Version 1. The kinetic monster. A bullet with a lead core. Due to its monstrous speed and energy, it would smash through the armor, dragging fragments of it inside the tank. The effect was horrific. But this scheme had a downside: at longer ranges or against thicker armor, the lead could simply flatten. Version 2. The tungsten dagger. Here, inside the bullet was a core made of super-hard tungsten carbide. Such a nail was capable of piercing more. But tungsten is expensive, scarce material. And here we run into economics. Poland in the 30s was an agrarian country with a beginning industrialization. Could it afford the mass production of tungsten-cored bullets? Most likely, no. It's more probable that both types of ammunition existed. A limited number of premium rounds with tungsten for special occasions, and the main, mass-produced ones with lead. And the myth of the chlorine bullet. That's likely an echo of some very early laboratory experiments that never made it to the battlefield. Part 3: Spy Thrills and the Uruguay Marking. Now, this myth is my favorite. Supposedly, the Poles were so cunning that they named the project Uruguay, hence the UR marking on the crates, to confuse everyone. And they even allegedly delivered the rifles to troops in crates marked medical equipment. Sounds like a script for a Hollywood thriller. But reality, as is often the case, is much more boring and logical. Secrecy, yes, there was, but not because the weapon was something cosmic. Imagine, you've produced a complex, expensive tool with a barrel whose service life is limited to 300 shots. Do you want it endlessly dragged to firing ranges, wasting that life? No. It was saved for the crucial hour H. The crates were kept sealed so they wouldn't be frittered away. As for Uruguay, there's a version that it could have been either a bureaucratic note, perhaps an export contract was considered, or an internal factory code. No grand disinformation campaign, just routine. But how beautifully this routine transformed into a legend of brilliant camouflage. Part 4: Debunking the main technical myths. Let's now go through the two most famous technical falsehoods. Myth number 1: the tapered barrel. Allegedly, the rifle had a barrel that narrowed towards the muzzle, like the famous Gerlich system. This would have accelerated the bullet even more. Sounds fantastic. Let's check the facts. The bullet of the 7.92 by 107 cartridge did not have driving bands, special thickenings that would be swaged in a tapered barrel. Without them, the Gerlich scheme doesn't work. In fact, the barrel was ordinary cylindrical. All the magic was in the cartridge and the barrel length of 1,200 millimeters. That's it. Myth number 2: 20 shots and then scrap. One of the most harmful myths. Supposedly, the barrel burned out so badly that after 2 or 3 dozen shots, the rifle could be thrown away. This is complete nonsense from an engineering and economic standpoint. Imagine spending effort, money, time on producing a weapon that self-destructs after one battle. The actual barrel life was those 300 shots. That's precisely why 3 spare barrels were included in the kit. The myth most likely arose from confusion. Firing specifically tungsten-cored bullets, which were rare, did wear out the barrel faster, but not by tens of times. Soldiers' gossip inflated this to absurdity. Part 5: Fate on the battlefield. Success or illusion? And here we come to the most important part. September 39th. The Blitzkrieg. German divisions, supported by tanks, slam into Poland. Where was our wonder weapon? Ironically, it became a hostage to its own secrecy. About 3,500 were produced against a plan of 7,600. They really were safeguarded, stored in warehouses. Crews were not properly trained. Crates were often opened already under bombardment. And when the rifles did enter combat, they performed adequately. Not phenomenally, but simply as a good weapon of its class. They could fight light tanks like the PZ.I and PZ.2 and armored cars. But against the newer PZ.3 and PZ.4 with their 30mm frontal armor, the chances were slim. You had to let the tank come within 100 to 200 meters, hit its side or rear. That is a feat of heroism, achievable by only a few under fire and thunder. And here we make a key conclusion. Even if all 7,600 planned rifles had been promptly issued to trained soldiers, they would not have changed the course of the campaign. Why? Because wars are won not by individual weapons, but by a system. Intelligence, communications, command and control, aviation, mobility, overall troop training and strategy. Poland, unfortunately, in 39 was inferior to the Wehrmacht in all these parameters. An anti-tank rifle is just a tool in the hands of the infantry, a very important one, but not a decisive one. Its fame is a classic example of retrospective justification. It's hard for a people, an army, a country to accept defeat due to systemic failures. It's much easier to say, we had a super weapon, but we weren't allowed to use it. We were betrayed. It's psychologically understandable. That's how a myth is born. And the real, well-made, but ordinary rifle becomes a symbol of a mischance that never actually existed. History's lessons and the iron logic of progress. The story of the wz.35 is not a story of failure. It's a story of competent engineering work under conditions of limited resources and time. It's a story of how a tactical niche for a certain type of weapon can appear and then rapidly disappear under the onslaught of technology. Already by 41, with the appearance of tanks with even thicker armor, the era of big rifles against tanks was practically over. They were replaced by more powerful anti-tank guns and, later, shape-charge grenade launchers. So, remembering this rifle, let's give credit to the Polish engineers and soldiers. They did what they could on the eve of a world catastrophe. Their weapon wasn't magical. It was human, with its own merits, limitations, and a very heavy fate. So, what do you think, everyone? Do you agree that the myth of the wonder weapon often prevents us from seeing the real, much more complex causes of events? Or maybe you believe that if the wz.35 had been used differently, something could have changed? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's debate. Let's discuss. And of course, if this deep dive was interesting to you, if you want to continue unraveling historical puzzles with me, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Your engagement helps the channel grow and find new topics. Thanks for staying with me until the end of this long story. See you next time on the channel.